Hi, and welcome to FX PhD Photogrammetry. On this class, we do have another drone shot, and on this one, particularly, we do have two tricky things. The first thing is water, with a lot of reflection. The second thing is vegetation. Those two things we might have some issue during the photogrammetry because for the water it's going to be extremely tricky for reality capture to understand in depth where is everything, and it's why it makes things extremely tricky. The second thing is vegetation, because we do have a lot of thin details. So it's going to be extremely hard on this kind of wide angle and this amount of data and images to see how we can handle and how we can solve something with so many details. So this is why I think this is an extremely interesting exercise to see how with this kind of like configuration with a small bridge here and the water going below the bridge, see how reality capture is going to handle everything. So let's get started. The first thing we can check, it's the amount of frames. So basically, if you import the video, the thing is like we have more than 3,400 images. So it means we do have a huge amount of data to treat. But the thing is, as we noticed and checked last time, in between frames, we don't have a massive amount of parallax. So the idea to make sure we cannot spend hours doing some alignments in reality capture and hours recreating a mesh, we can definitely export every 10 frames or every 20 frames is definitely much better, because in between 10 frames at least you do have a little bit of parallax, and we know to recreate some geometry we need some parallax. So what I reckon is we're gonna export this every 25 frames or maybe every 15 frames. So in Nuke, what you have to do is just to render something and put x15 here. Means it's gonna render every 15 frames and then render. So we're gonna have a much better and way less amount of images to treat and enough parallax in between pictures. So it's basically just to recreate something we can do with our camera. So now we have exported this. Let's jump in reality capture. So first of all, you can do this. You can definitely load a video here. So if you load this one here and open, it's going to be exactly the same as you export like every single frames. But again, what I do prefer is always to export each file sequence, because it's a way we do work in general for edit or CG or VFX in general. So here now, I'm going to just import my frames here. So instead of having 3,488 frames, I do have only 233 images. So way better to treat. So if you zoom out and you check every frame, so we do have like everyone here, and we do have enough parallax in between frames, and see now how long and how reality capture is going to handle it. So again, what is going to be interesting is to see vegetation and water. Vegetation because it's about the amount of thin details we have, and water because it's a reflection. So he don't know where these pixels in between two images, how, in depth, how and where is this element. So let's do a quick draft. So this is good because we don't have a huge amount of data to treat. It's why it's always good to have something as clever as possible. Obviously, we can brute force everything. It will take hours, but means if something fails or if too much to treat in memory or in process or depending on your computer, you might lose like hours, days, or even nights of processing. So it's why For instance, I prefer, even if I have to process every single images, it's always better to do a quick test with the minimum of data and a quick draft, just to see where the software, not even Reality Capture, but just in general, quickly to mock up something and see the direction, the vector we are going to. So here, instead of waiting hours, because I did the test previously, so we have to spend like a solid an hour and a half, even like almost 2 hours to treat this amount of images, because it was huge images in 2K. So let's go back here, and here is gonna spend like a minute and 14 seconds. So way easier. And we do have already, as we noticed, we have the path of the drones here, and you can see already in my pan clouds already the geometry. Here, for instance, we have only one component, so this is good, means we don't have any discrepancy in between two different models. So what we can do now, we know this is gonna work, so I'm gonna just press align and spend another few minutes just to make sure we have something accurate. Sometimes it's even quicker because with the draft, but I believe it's gonna take like maybe a little bit, like slightly over a minute just to solve it. So depends what you have to do. Again, like try to do a few tests before doing like a brute force and make sure you can align the 3,488 images. Of course, it would be a very good idea to test it, but I reckon it won't be very necessary, because in between those two images, we have a very, very small amount of parallax. And again, the idea to make a different picture is just to create parallax in between and make sure we can cover like a fair amount in between the two images, something in common in between images, so the software know this point here in depth on this image, it's here on the next images. So 15 image, every 15 images. Oh, I think it's just processing, taking a little bit. So it's why it's taking time to refresh. It's enough in terms of parallax to recreate something. Back in Reality Capture, it took a minute and a half, and we have a nice now alignment. So this is great. Oops, let's zoom out, and we see already our geometry. So again, let's make sure we can refocus our bounding box here, and we create a quick mesh. So we don't necessarily need everything. Again, depends on what you need. But what is interesting is you can see barely the water here, the white water on the river. But let's try to go back on scene, tab, go on top, make sure we can cover as close as possible, just to make sure we don't waste too much points. There we go. Let's go on the side. There we go. This is not too bad. Gonna extend a little bit to see more here, and right, left. Yeah, I'm gonna extend it slightly here. Yeah, quite happy with that. And now go back to perspective and do again, because alignments, preview, just to see the direction and the vector of what you get. But the idea is, again, as you noticed on the previous example, the idea is not to have something extremely accurate. It's just a matter to have something decent as a base to move to the next stage. And there we go. We have already a mesh. And it's quite amazing, because you noticed we have already the basement of everything. We have definitely the topology of the terrain, and you see every single trees, bush, and rock and water here, and the small bridge we saw on the video here. So now we have this. I'm quite happy. There's no massive issue. What we can do maybe is just to adjust slightly this, because it's a bit too raw. So we're gonna lose this part. It's not necessary. Quite happy with that. And yeah, let's do a normal mesh. So this is good because, as you notice, it's always good to do a quick draft. Again, it depends of your configuration, depends of what you have to do, but try always to do a quick preview for the alignment or reconstruction, because it takes roughly minutes or few minutes, not over than this, and you have a good idea of where you're going. So for instance, as we noticed for the status with the fish and the little boy, we do a quick test as a draft, and we noticed already we have two components straight away. So means the coverage was not good enough. So you have to, from the beginning, add extra points. So it doesn't matter if it's a lot of images, means we don't have enough images, so we have straight away to have to compensate the lack of images. So I'm gonna leave it just finish. Okay, take like maybe roughly 3 minutes just to do a normal detail reconstruction mesh, and we're gonna see what we get. And we are pretty much done now. So it took an average 10 minutes just to complete this full environment. So we're gonna see what we get after those 10 minutes. So again, remember you can minimize this and go back to this and have the end hand just to do anything you want. Go back to progress bar, show progress, and this is back to the full screen, just in case if you miss something, but you can always minimize or pause, depends on what you want, because your CPU is quite busy, I think, here, just to solve everything. So sometimes it could be very, very high here. So just in case, you can definitely pause it and resume a little bit later on. And if you go back to this and you missed basically what's happened or how long it took or whatever, remember you have here in this small icon here, and you see basically how long it took just to rebuild a normal detailed meshes. So 636 seconds just to complete everything. And for the preview, it took 21 seconds. So let's go back to the 3D view. So what's amazing is you notice we do have now our full environment, and it did complete something extremely accurate. So we have the trees, the topography of the mesh, we are our CG pilots who did the drone, who drive the drone. So you can see here is definitely the guy looking at the controller just to drive the drone here. So we do have everything. And here we have our small bridge. Even so means reality capture was able to understand we have a small bridge and something going below the bridge and the water. And because it's not able to rebuild something accurate, because we do have something extremely high, we have 7 million triangle or polygon here in total. So this is what is extremely interesting, and all the different parts here to combine together. So now what I'm gonna do, obviously, it's 7 millions is definitely too high to handle this in Maya. So what I'm gonna do is to simplify to 1 million. Because it depends on your machine, and it could be extremely high to process like 10 million polygon just for the environment. Maybe you have to be very, very high, depends on what you need. But for this geometry, for these examples, we don't have to be very high, because we don't have an extremely accurate mesh, and it was the purpose, is just to get the topography, like the topology and topography of this, like something rough. And now I do have 1 million polygon. And you notice between this one and this one, is not extremely different. It's why I highly recommend to do something like this. And you see here, for instance, all the bushes or trees, it's extremely rough. But again, photogrammetry for tree or vegetation is not like something we can do. Definitely not. It will do something extremely rough. But here you do have the full environment in 3D in less than half an hour, with just an import and all the manipulation and workflow we saw on the previous videos. So now I'm gonna go back to my warp and export this one quickly. In warp my model. Always a good idea to in-warp the UVs based on the lighter model, because if it's too high, it will take ages. And now I'm gonna bake the texture. And because we project the texture based on the drone images, is why it's like a camera mapping. So we do have something extremely high resolution in terms of geometry, in terms of results, because we project straight away the footage or the scan if you want. So it's why what we need at the end is something rough, something good enough to do a layout. And in the CG workflow, VFX workflow, what we can do is just to revisit different area if we do have a sequences, for instance, on the bridge, and then we can definitely have a second version or something, a better version for the action, for the sequence. But at least we get the full environment extremely quickly, and then we can revisit the bridge where all the action it's happening for like a full sequence, many shots. But at least the rest, we do have the nice environments with the lighting, the reflections, the occlusion. So it's just a matter to get a nice lighting and now to do a normal layout based on this one. Obviously, for this VFX pipeline and our workflow, make sure you get the right scale. Always work on the right scale, except like very exception, like huge scenes with spaceships or in space, or this we can have like a different approach. But most of the time, it's very high recommended to work with the right scale of the CG. And now we do have our final result. So again, we do have like our pilots just right there, and we have our bridge with the water. And again, we cannot have something extremely accurate because the angle was too high. But you see, as a layout, we have something very good. So because the camera was very high, we cannot zoom in like this, but it's enough to get the full topology of the ground. And Reality Capture did an amazing job to get everything sorted in less than half an hour from the beginning until the end. So what we have to do is now to export and check in Maya. But yeah, it's definitely what it's supposed to be. So let's now export everything. Even on the bridge. Yeah, very good. Very good result. So mesh, we're gonna export as we're gonna put snow Doria modeling. Yeah, 260 cache. Make sure we have TIFF is fine, your dims, everything is okay. Gonna export everything, sorted. And now in Maya, import. And let's have a look on our meshes. Mesh story here. Modification. Yeah, we have our standard area model. I can see we have different UDIMs, so this is good news. Import. Take a little while. Time to import our mesh, and it's just 1 million polygons. So if you have 10 millions, could be quite heavy You can even crash your computer if you are not very careful. So I'm gonna rotate like this, minus 90 degrees. Yeah, very happy. And you see we have our geometry. Yeah, and export, sorry, create manual surface shader. Import my file and make sure I can look at in cache, obj, modification, no, wrong one, yes, TIFF, it's definitely, it looks like what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna import the first one, doesn't matter, because you're gonna switch to UDIMS, so you don't have to pick the first images. Just a quick check, sanity check it just to see the UDIMS, and yeah, this is very decent. We have big chunk, so this is good news. Again, if you have too many small chunk, what you can do in reality capture during the unwarp is to tweak the gutter here and large triangle removal threshold. So those two values will change the way he's gonna unwarp the UVs in the different UDIMs. So back in Maya, yeah, this is very decent. We have our 10 UDIMs. You have even more space. Yeah, this could be a bit more optimized, but it's okay for now. Let's go back here and render with Arnold. Time to convert in TX, and we have our model. Perfectly done and very similar to reality capture. So now we can put a camera and do some layouts based on this. Yeah, I can definitely do now some camera traveling and do my layout task. So that's it with the photogrammetry course. I hope it was extremely useful to learn how we can get something out quickly with reality capture on different examples, with 2 different camera examples, 1 helicopter and 2 drone shots. Thank you very much and see you next time.